Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who is kind and fair and doesn't torture his subjects for some reason.
Tim Longo.
I torture my subjects. I actually torture our intros most of the time is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, you're torturing the audience.
Proudly for 10 years, torturing the audience. So we are back to our Dungeon Keeper. I am stalled out, so we'll get to that. We'll see if
I am too, just not on the same level.
Yeah, not on the same level. So yeah, maybe who knows what's happening with us with this game. But
we may want to do a multiplayer.
Oh yeah,
maybe that's our fourth episode.
maybe that is. Yeah, we should talk about that. See if that is possible for your stream night. That's tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll try to do a test during the day. See if that can happen. Anyway, you will see announced in the Discord. There's a link for that in the show notes if that is what we decide to do. And if you stick around to the end, you can hear Tim's Twitch channel. Anyway, you were saying in pre-show how you are, the more you play, the more you are grooving with the odd genre mixture that we have here, and thought we'd start there and then get into particulars.
Yeah, it's just I think we talked about in pre-show that I think there's maybe 20 levels total, and we're about kind of halfway-ish, and I don't know how far we're gonna get, but despite that, I just really, and I think I mentioned this a tiny bit last episode, but the farther in I'm going, I'm just really, especially because of level 9 that I think you haven't played yet, but it's just such an interesting mixture of genres that I can't think of. I mean, you mentioned Overlord. There's a few that are kind of adjacent. Maybe it's just because it's too complex at the end of the day, but the fact that if you think about some of my favorite genres over time, like RTSes, I love a good sim, at the right time in my life, as far as like Civ or whatever. I'll lose myself in Civ. When we played Civ Beyond Earth, I sunk, 20 hours into that after the podcast was over. So it's like, they'll hit with me, and then, essentially mining or building kind of games. And this has all three of them in one game. And then there's actually a fourth sort of like bonus that I just thought of is that thematically I love fantasy stuff too,
Sure, yeah.
And so even though you're playing the bad faction,
that's more of a narrative genre rather than a game genre. But
yeah, exactly. So the setting matters for me though, and so it's just the more I play, the more I realize that the Venn diagram here for me is it's right in the center of these circles, and and I think both of us are hit potentially wall missions where you start to see the complexity of the genre mixing come into the forefront and really become a challenge, because I'm sure, I don't remember this from back in the day. I think I finished it back when it came out, but I can't even be positive on that. I think it's now that we're both deeper in, I think it's highly likely I didn't.
Yeah, but I know that I didn't. And actually, we can talk. It was actually there's really two reasons why. One is the mix. So I mean, back when this came out, I was a RTS player. I was never a sim player. We've played some for the cast, but it's never been my genre, and really not the mining building stuff either, right? So like this actually hits me only really on the narrative end these days. I really do like the feeling of like, being the evil, the mad genius. That's actually another one. The evil genius is a building where you're building a lair, a villain's lair. Mm-hmm. It's sort of a comic book fantasy or a James Bond fantasy where you're the evil villain.
Yeah, right.
So, and I have one of those, but I've never gotten around. I don't think I maybe played the demo back in the day when the first version of that came out. I think there was a sequel, and I think that's actually pretty similar in vibe to this. So that might be one that is worth looking at. Yeah, but for me, the thing that does carry me forward is just like I love when games go all in on a theme and like just build everything around that theme, like we talked about. So that's the thing that hooks me. The reason why I didn't get past it back in, I think it was 99, is that this game did not correct for time. So if you had a CPU that was faster, and as a developer, I had a really good CPU for 99, which was, a factor of 2 better than the systems that would have been recommended for this game when it came out, at least, maybe more because of not Murphy's Law. Whatever the law. I'm sundowning.
How did you forget that one? That's the one law that I think you should always know.
I know.
Yeah, I'm blanking on his name.
Yeah,
it is an M, right?
Yeah. Now I'm gonna have to cut all of this. Anyway,
Nope, keeping it in.
The reason why I wasn't able to get past is because the game started to get really, really. I mean, the game was fast to begin with, but it became so fast that it was impossible to manage. Like there was so much going on. Like the early levels, I was like, "Wow, this moves pretty quick." Didn't know that it wasn't corrected for time. Just by which I mean they didn't factor into the, how much time was happening to render a frame. They were just assuming it was running at 30. And if 30 happened to, take half a second instead of a second, it ran twice as fast. And so all your interactions had to be twice as fast. So for a number of levels, I was perfectly fine because it's not too hard. And then I think I might have gotten to this level that I'm stuck on now, level 8. It might have been earlier, it might have been level 6, but where I just was like, wow, this is really a lot. And Chris Corey, who I shared an office with at the time, is the lead programmer on Starfighter and a friend, both of ours. He came over and was like, oh, that's not right. He just was watching me try to play. I'm like, Chris, this game's really hard, because he had recommended it to me. He was like, no, it shouldn't be that bad. And he comes over and he's watching. And he's like, oh, there's something wrong here. So, it's quite a time.
Superhero mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think the takeaway for me on this, which actually now that I think about it, I probably will have to be one of my takeaways for the last episode. It's like, and we've talked about genre merging many times over the 10 years because a lot of these games are either creating genres that we play for the podcast, or creating genres, or at least combining them. But when you're trailblazing like they're doing with this game, you don't have a model like with StarCraft. That came from Warcraft, and you have Command and Conquer, and there's kind of like some, not rules, but there's some preconceived notions that players are going to have. Conventions, yeah, correct. That's the good word for it. The correct word for it. And so with this, they have some conventions from those genres they're pulling from, but by and large, they're either conventions that they're pulling from themselves, i.e. populace or such. But because no one has really combined, at this time, nobody had combined these things together. Guiding the player and difficulty for guiding the player is not really known. So really I would assume their only tool they had was playtesting. And then we also know that traditionally challenging in this era, that not enough developers playtested their games.
Yeah.
I mean, us, case in point, ourselves, right? Like even despite LucasArts' resources, Republic Commando was too hard, as we talked about when we did that series. So I think we're both, hitting a place where you're like, okay, if you don't really know this game well, and you don't really understand the curves that have to happen for you to get to certain places in a match at certain times, you're going to hit these walls because the CPU is just going to be faster than you.
Yeah, and
And
cheating.
you just and cheating, yeah, and
Yeah,
you
I
just
mean, not
don't.
I shouldn't say cheating because what does that even mean in the context of
They're
a video game?
balancing,
But
yeah.
yeah, they're balancing for a certain level of difficulty that they expect the player to overcome, and they achieve that however they achieve that, like by scripting. You know, there's been times in this wall mission for me where I'm like, is this because I'm going after this thing over here that it's like triggering a phase where they develop faster, like they get a bunch of units or something like that. Like I've been wondering if it's literally just I am, going after, I felt that
Yeah.
way with 6, I think, as well, where I felt like, oh, maybe I wasn't supposed to do that so soon because I thought it got harder. But I mean, that's player perception. Who knows, right? It's difficult to tell unless you're literally watching the computer do its stuff, which is hard to do, right? You have a spell where you can put it down in one place, I think, and you could watch one area if you wanted. You're not going to see everything happen, so you'll probably miss some things if that's what you're trying to do. So yeah, there's a lot that feels opaque. It's definitely a time where you're expected to read the manual and understand it, and kind of and it's a thick manual for this one. It's like 50 pages of information.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, every room and every unit is laid out, and each one is basically half a page of stuff. I mean, they're not there's not a lot of flavor, but there's also not. It's funny because I went and looked because I was like, well, what happens? And we'll talk about some of the room side effects in a minute. But it's not like there's a lot of stuff like, well, you need to have this and you need to have that in order to have this room, or this room will allow you to have this unit. Like that information is there. There is some information like with the prison, like, oh, if you have the prison, then if you want to actually imprison people, you have to hit this button
Mhm.
to knock them out basically and drag them to your prison.
Yeah.
Which I do a lot because I like getting, but it takes forever for them to starve.
I have a story about that for level 9 that I wanna tell.
Yeah, we'll get to that later in the episode. Anyway, so it's hard to look and be like to get everything you need from the manual,
That sounds
even
like the
then.
basics, yeah, but
Yeah,
not really the relationships, yeah.
right. And not in particular, one of the things that we're theorizing about in pre-show is like what size do rooms need to be and why do they need to be those sizes? It seems like you need a 5 by 5 or possibly larger room lair and a 5 by 5 hatchery, both, to get the bile demon, who is pretty powerful, really good melee unit. Doesn't move very fast, but really packs a punch. And you'd like to get some of those early so you can, get a training room up and get them punching, and I mean, the training room feels more like um, the the enclosed area is all that matters. So I was theorizing in pre-show that they like squares just because they're efficient in terms of perimeter to enclosed area. So a square is in a rectangle world, so a grid world like this, a square is the most efficient enclosure of area, just as a circle would be if you were not constrained to a grid. So it sort of feels like that's maybe why the squares, that it might be a side effect. It also might be designed like that they actually want to know or something. I don't even know what you would do, to determine that. But anyway, it basically generates a certain number of slots in the enclosed area for creatures to work out in, in the training room,
Mhm.
for example, or in the torture chamber. There's a certain number of tables, for them to be strapped down to, if at different sizes of room and things like that. So it's just a whole thing that you have to be paying attention to. And I played this 8th level several times before I was like, it's really weird that I'm not getting that bile demon because I've had it before.
Mm.
And only on the 3rd time playing it did I get it. And that was because I was like, well, I know because I played it several times, I'm like, well, I know I'm ultimately going to need a lair this big and a hatchery this big. And so I just did it at the beginning.
Mm. Right.
Right. So I kind of learned it, but I didn't really it wasn't like I learned a rule. I just was like, well, ultimately I'm going to need it to be this big. I don't feel like all the management of dashing around and resizing rooms all the time, which is normally how I play. It's like, oh, I build a small treasure room and I build a small, whatever layer and a small hatchery. And I just manage that. And then like when I start getting messages like your treasure room's too small, I go and expand it. Right. That's just kind of how I try to manage my time. And this time I was like, well, this is my third time trying this level. I know these are going to get to be this big, so I'm just going to start them that big so I don't have to do that again.
Right.
And then I started getting the Bile Demon. I'm like, huh. So like, I would have liked to know that.
But yeah. It's, I mean, it's definitely an era when there was that kind of weird middle ground of there's the manual, but then also strategy guides, and also, I don't know. It wasn't the clearest era for games, I feel like. And
whatever. We were just on the cusp of teaching players better in games, right? Because, as consoles became more of a big part of the audience, right? The PC, it was expected you read the manual, right? And then we all had a rude awakening when we started making games for the PS2. Like, oh no, you don't. You can't. Nobody's going to read that. It was a real switch.
They don't care. Yeah. It's there's, especially with games like this, if you take each subgenre that they're mixing here, there's always that moment, for me at least, in games like this where there's many terms we could use, but I'll be silly and call it, when you see the Matrix, right? Where you're like, you kind of subconsciously start playing the game in a way because you know it so well that, and you kind of know, like to your point on the Bile Demons, you kind of know what you need to do. So it just kind of becomes second nature, right? To play. Yeah. And that's in RTSes, like StarCraft is the one I played probably the most. At some point you get to a point where you're just like, yeah, I'm doing this. I know enough about, I'm not maybe a pro, but I know enough about the game to be very comfortable. When I set a goal for myself, I know how to achieve that goal. And with this game, because they've combined different elements, in different genres, it seems to me like it's even more tricky to explain that to the player in a graceful way, to where they can have this game be second nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I described it earlier as far as getting over the hump is the other term that I think we use, or that I use. And until you get over that hump, it's just a confounding experience, and you do hit wall missions a lot because you're like, I don't get it, or what am I doing wrong? But you do get over it. You mentioned in pre-show Dwarf Fortress as well, and as I've been streaming that, and I'm intentionally not looking at guides, though I've had some guides in the form of humans come online
helpful experts
and explain some things, people who played the game thousands of hours. But Dwarf Fortress is another one of those where it's like they're intentionally not telling you things for some reason, and you do have to kind of like figure it out in a way, or look at a guide. So it's interesting to play that way, and this the same way. So I don't, I'm getting, it's like for RTSs and strategy games in general, I think there's always like, because it's so repetitious in each phase, like we talked about last episode, you get really good at early game, right? And then you start working on your mid game, and then you get really good at mid game, and then you start working on your late game, and there's these cycles that you go through from a knowledge standpoint and a kind of a practicing standpoint. And once you get all three, then you feel like you see the Matrix, but until
it's almost like there's a Moore's law for understanding. I remembered the name.
Wow. You worked it into
with some other Irish name.
Well, in knowledge, right?
Yep.
As we joke about, like, so yeah, it's we're both, you are, I'm a couple levels ahead of you, but also stuck, and I can explain that later. But it is because there's something I do have this feeling, whether true or not, like you mentioned earlier, it could be player perception. I have this feeling that I'm not understanding something, and I don't know what. it's going on.
Yeah.
And I played it 4 times.
And I mean, one of the things that you talked about with the mission I'm on, which gave you no trouble, thanks very much, is just having this sense of when to go, and which is funny because I've been partly in response to like past episodes is like, I'm trying to explore the map more to look for those special items. I mean, I found one on level 8, which was transfer creature, and I don't know what it does.
Yeah. Wait till I tell you.
Okay. And because I was
I don't exactly know how it works, but I know what it does.
It felt like at first I thought I was taking a creature from them, but I wasn't seeing a creature appear on my side. So it feels like I'm stealing a creature for the future.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you? Or
yeah, please do, because I'm spending all this time going after that thing, and I don't know what it does. It might be in the manual. I've gone and looked at the manual for certain things.
It's in the manual.
Out of curiosity, like how does the torture room in particular? I was like, how does that work? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it I don't know how the interface for it works. So it sounds like maybe you've actually used it. But it transfers a creature to the next level.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is it looked like that was the case because I got the Hellhounds.
So you can like level something up really high.
Yeah.
And take that with you.
Well, then I got that transfer creature, and I knew the enemy didn't have Hellhounds. Because I had fought the enemy enough at that point to know they didn't have any of those. So I realized it was coming from my list of creatures. And then at that point I was like, well, what could it mean? Transfer. I mean, it only makes sense if it's like put it in your pocket and bring it with you. It's the only thing that made sense at that point. And the hounds were like level 7. So, that would be what I would pick, but I was like, I'm not getting a bonus creature. This is weird. What's going on?
Yeah, so weird. It's probably in the manual then, but
yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of that stuff is in there, and I just can't be bothered. This is a playing podcast, not a reading podcast.
Well, there is a book segment that we haven't done in a while.
No, it's gone. Like the singer reviews, you see, we try them, we do them for a while, we let them go. But yeah, the rooms have these side effects as well, which is a reason to read the manual. And I will give the torture room in particular because that's the one I looked up. The barracks, actually, I looked up too because that was interesting. I don't know if you've been building barracks.
I have, but only out of habit. I think it's because I want orcs. But
yes, so it'll bring orcs, but you'll like this. So actually, I'll talk about that. But some rooms have basically special effects. The torture room, if you are torturing a creature, you only need to put one creature of a type. So warlock, for example. Don't put 2 warlocks in, it doesn't help. You just put 1 warlock in, and all the other warlocks will work for half the money. So on payday, they cost half as much. As long as that warlock is alive, and of course you can release them at any time. You just kind of click on their square and it releases them. And I think they get angry or sad. I don't remember which. And then the temple will improve the moods of creatures, and then the barracks, it does. I think it does bring in the orc. I think you need a barracks to bring in the orc. But what it does is you put creatures into the barracks, and then you can go and in the barracks room, whatever creatures are in there, you pick one and possess it, and the rest will follow as a group with you, the one you have possessed.
Whoa!
So you basically become a leader of a little squad by possessing someone in the barracks.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I didn't know.
I just inhabited a dragon recently and tried to infiltrate their base with my dragon.
Oh, that's a quiet entry.
Yeah, exactly. They're really slow though, so it wasn't effective, but I did recently possess, and then I possessed a warlock too. So I still do some of that for fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it might be valuable, right? I mean, there might be strategic reasons to do that. I mean, and one of the things about the game is it doesn't it's not clear to me what the value is of doing that versus letting the AI do it. So that's another point where there's some
this mission
fog.
I'm on now, like I think so to spoil it a little bit, I think that the way that the mission that 10 is set up and the reason I'm having such trouble with it is I think it's designed for you to rush.
Mm.
Because they're very aggressive and they're very close, and they will, and so you can kind of get into combat pretty quickly, and there's no way you can outlevel them because the CPU is just gonna level faster.
Right.
So every time I meet them, their units are higher level. But I think if you possess and go in yourself, because you can't directly control if you have them attack the heart, I think you just go in with somebody high enough level early and just, clean house. Because once, because you can't drop your units in behind enemy lines, but you can possess a unit and go behind enemy lines,
Mm.
right? And be very targeted and just go out and take. Oh, and the other thing, which is good old RTS tactic, is take out their imps because they're going to be low level and easy to kill. And once they lose too many imps, it's like, everything grinds to a halt. So that's a common tactic that, yeah. So I'm in the process
They
of
have to be
investigating.
economically starved to do that because making new imps is not expensive.
Yeah, that's true, but they they will lose the ability to get more. Yeah, I mean, if they're not economically starved, but I've had some success with it. So
Okay.
I don't.
I mean,
I
it
don't
might be
know.
just a blind spot on the CPU as well, that the AI does not think to make more minions as much, like that it would rank that lower as a tactic among the things that would be choosing from. So that could be it as
Right.
well.
Well, yeah. If they can make them instantly, but yeah, they also, yeah. I don't know. I mean, they have to carry the gold back and things like that. So
Right.
it's hard to say. But
Yeah, the imps are the imps basically start at something like, I don't know, if you don't have any, it might be as low as like 200 or something like that, and they get more expensive each one you make. But crucially, it's based on the number you have, not the number you've ever created. So, like, if you don't
yeah,
have any, then it's really cheap to create one,
yeah,
regardless of how many you've lost. At the beginning, at the start, I think you can make one for like 400 or 500 gold or something like that. You could go from 4 to 5.
yeah. That sounds right.
And then the ramp is like, it's like, goes up by 100, then it goes up by 150, then it goes up by 250 or something like that. Not that I've made that many. I usually just let the 4 do their work, the 4 that you always start with. But maybe that's another thing I could do to speed my level 8 troubles. Anyway, so we both talked a lot about kind of the wall missions that we're on. It's a real problem for this sort of game. And this game in particular does feel like there is a puzzle aspect to some. I mean, not entirely a puzzle, but more like a very like strategic thinking of like, well, think about what you're looking at here. So you're talking about, I think you said in pre-show, where they're using the rock walls, the impenetrable walls that you can't carve through, to sort of guide the player.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know that you've got that pinch point, presumably you want to control that first, so that you can deploy units there quickly, right? For example, because you can't, like you said, you can't deploy behind enemy lines. So some of those things sort of contribute to the puzzle aspect. I mean, in level, I think it was 6, I described last week, it had sort of the C shape in the middle, which is where the Dark Maidens were, and the already built torture chamber. But there was a ton of gold, and I was like, well, I got to get there first, right? I mean, that was a clear signal that
mm-hmm.
to win the economic game, you had to control that area, and so you could just sit there and, mine to your heart's content. But have you found other puzzly aspects that I mean, maybe level 8 is a puzzle. That's why I'm having trouble, and you just happen to solve it.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah, I remember playing the level, but I don't remember why I didn't have trouble with it. I mean, I think it goes back to the when do you attack topic, which
Yeah.
we might dig into deeper. But I think because that is another there is a tension with especially RTSs that I've always loved with that because a lot of people's instincts will be to build up as much as you can before going, but with especially against AI, they're building up as well, and most likely, if you wait too long, they'll be higher than you. So there's always this sweet spot I found
Yeah.
to to attack, and if you wait too long, it could actually work against you. So maybe I just got lucky.
Yeah. I mean, I
Um,
think that for me, that's, well, there's been two parts of it. One is that the way you're describing it, it sounds like you didn't spend a lot of time going after sort of the left side of the map, the west side of the map, and you really just kind of like did an end run around the east side of the map, which is where their dungeon heart was. And I've been sort of like turtling to build up to take on the
mm,
west side of the map, build up some forces that are strong enough to take out the various things that are there. And like you said, that's basically giving the CPU heroes, or I guess it's another keeper, the CPU keeper, just time to really build its forces. So that, I mean, I've got like level 6 bile demons coming against me, and I'm just like, oh, like
wow, yeah.
crushed. So there might be something like that where I'm just going after the wrong things. I'm reading the signals wrong as far as what the level wants me to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, reading them wrong is one thing, but also it may not be sending the right signals, to be
Well, yeah,
honest.
no, yeah,
And that's to the point on the flow, which obviously X level designer here. Like I'm always thinking about this stuff, though I've never obviously built a game like this or a level like this. But it's interesting to me to think about how the level designers, the map designers were trying to guide the flow of the map. And so impenetrable rock is an obvious one, but also gold placement is another one, right? Because they can
mm,
flow the level based on that and connect enemies to gold veins that you will then uncover that will then connect the two realms, etc., and then fighting will happen, etc. So it's just interesting. But with impenetrable rock in level 9, it's very designed because there's a section of the map that is sort of this elaborate dungeon crawl area that's very D&D feeling. And then the specific objective areas are completely designed shape wise and flow wise with the impenetrable rock. Like you literally can't dig anywhere that you usually can, so you have to find the right opening essentially.
hmm
The center of the map it's hilarious because the gold veins are all in question marks, and there's 4 question marks gold veins in the middle of the map, and then and like literally the shape of a question mark, and then there's 4 quadrants. But it's just I think it might be my favorite map so far because there is building around your base and such, but then there's this sort of like exploration phase where you're almost doing a dungeon crawl because it's so, constrained in a way. And the objectives are very clear um, and specific, which I guess I'll spoil it for you. It doesn't matter, but
yeah.
I don't think you'll care. But so in that mission, I don't think there's another dungeon keeper, but a couple of them have had dungeon keepers and heroes, which I think has been interesting. But in this one, it's just heroes, but there's 4 wizards that are hidden essentially throughout the level in the 4 kind of quadrants, and then supported with other hero types. And you have to kill those 4 wizards basically.
Oh, cool.
But each of those 4 wizards are locked behind doors of some kind in their own libraries, which is cool.
Yeah.
And I think they're all level 7s. And so it was just this really cool, interesting process of uncovering the map, trying to figure out where they were. It wasn't totally symmetrical or anything, so you weren't quite sure sometimes where one of the wizards was going to be, other than knowing there was a door. Some of them had traps outside the door, so you had to deal with the traps, and it was just kind of a little bit more like I said, it was like I guess there is in this mission's case, there's another genre thrown in there, and that is the dungeon crawl genre, right? Where
Right.
even though I guess actually in that level I forgot to possess. If I had possessed, it would have been a whole different game because I could have just run through these these areas. God, I know that you don't do the possession very much, but it's like
At all.
it's still mind boggles. It's just mind boggling that it's in the game
I
because it's
did
like
I did
you're
do it in
playing a whole other game.
1999 or whatever, and I dropped in, and I totally remember the experience. It definitely is a very striking experience, but at the same time, I was like, "This is not the way to play the game." Like, I lose so much information that that the enemy has, right? If they're not, presumably they're not playing this way. So, I just was like, "Well, that's not gonna be how I spend my time this time." But
It's
I'm
so
having
yeah,
trouble. I'm having trouble enough, without
yeah,
without
yeah.
going into that sort
It's
of
just
thing.
weird. It's so weird. Such a weird inclusion, but novel, I guess, at the very least. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this, they used impenetrable rock and gold to really guide you through that experience, and that was, even in an open genre like RTSs, which the maps tend to be pretty open to give players lots of options, other than like in the Blizzard sense, there's always the linear levels, right, where you're taking one squad through a whole level that
Right.
has to
Right.
survive. So no, I'm not talking about those, but generally, you need maps to be pretty open and to find a way to have the flexibility that this game has, but still guide the player through a map is really sounds very challenging as a level design challenge. And so I liked thinking about that. And level 9 was like I had a feeling and hoped that they would get pretty clever with the levels as it goes on, and this one was definitely one of those. But I have a funny ending
Yeah.
to this
Well,
story
let's go into
if
your
you want.
story on level 9 while we're talking about it, because who knows if I'll get there. So I might as well
So
hear it now.
yeah, I mean I'll just finish it up. It's just I basically told most of it there, but but the ending was the funny part because it was again sort of like what we were talking. I'll actually connect it to a previous topic of the confounding nature of the game. So you're supposed to kill these 4 wizards, find them and take them out. And as the description in the beginning, in its very snarkily written way, said, these said something like these wizards are too cocky, they're too confident. You need to knock them down a notch or something. And so it sets up this really clear goal. It sets up that there's these wizards who are overconfident. So like as far as like the fiction goes, I'm in, right? I'm in the mood. And then I find them and but I did have imprisonment on. And so I started basically taking out the heroes because there's a lot of heroes around them, protecting them and helping them. So my prison got pretty full with heroes, and I got toward the end of the map, and I was like, "What's going on?" I found everybody, I found everything, and I realized, oh, they actually have to be dead
Yeah.
to win the match,
Not
and
imprisoned and
not
waiting to
imprisoned.
starve.
Not waiting, yeah, so, I mean, if they would have starved, I would have eventually won. So I was like, "Well, I'm not gonna wait for them to starve." That's which is a whole other thing we won't talk about, but this game goes to some places that,
Yeah, I guess some
shouldn't go.
grim places. Yeah.
Grim places. So what I ended up doing, because I think I had 3 wizards who were still alive and in prison with all these other heroes, and I was like, "I got you all." So I basically put a rallying flag outside the prison and put all my all my best creatures. And when people are in prison, as you probably know, you can pick up the prisoners
Oh, I didn't know that.
as units and drop them places. And in fact, you can set them if you drop them out of the prison, they're free and they'll roam around and they'll attack you.
Yeah.
So I just basically picked up each wizard one by one and put them right by my
Wow.
banner.
So your line is starving, but not individually picking out a prisoner and giving it the beatdown. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to cut the moral lines as fine as I can here.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I was like, I want this mission to be over, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna do this because I actually don't know how long it would have taken for them to starve and die the other way.
It takes just a little too long, to be honest.
Yeah, right.
Because I've imprisoned the barbarians on level 8 a couple of times. It's cool because you end up, if they do starve, you end up with their skeletons, which are the same level as they were when
I didn't know that. Oh.
Yeah, so like I think the barbarians are all like level 5, so it's like, oh, suddenly you have, depending on how many you were able to imprison, you have up to maybe up to 6. There's like 3 to 6 barbarians, I think, in that area. I think 3 in the early game. Maybe the rest were just enemy units, and I just wasn't noticing. But there's certainly 3 barbarians. So you could have 3 level 5 skeletons that you get basically for not doing any extra work. I mean, you have to wait while that happens, but yeah, that was a thing. Anyway,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so are these hidden rooms you were talking about in pre-show, or are there other hidden rooms you were talking about in pre-show?
Well, so I would say my experience so far is that almost every map has like a little hidden mini dungeon in it someplace. And I'll call it a dungeon because it's more than just one room. It's usually like some hallways and a couple rooms or whatever, and it's usually designed out to look like, I would say, a little dungeon. And that's I guess, like I said just a few minutes ago, there is sort of another genre thrown in here, and that is that sort of dungeon crawl exploration feel. And I got to tell you, I love finding those things because they're just such a delight. I mean, it's weird to say delight in this game, but it's such a cool discovery because you are this dungeon keeper and you found somebody else's, in a way, like some ancient dungeon that was there before you. And sometimes there's gold in it, or most of the time there's a power up, which, you can pick up manually, or you can have your units pick up. And another thing I didn't know is that, like, for resurrect creature, if you find one of those, I don't know what happens if you pick it up, but if your creature picks it up, they bring it back to your library and you can use it at any time, which I thought was cool.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think I was picking it up. I mean, I normally had units that had died at that point, because I found these on level 7. I think I found it and I used it right away. And yeah, you basically get to pick of your creatures that have died, which one do you want?
There's just so much in this game. There's so many things. They just threw everything in.
There's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of different kind of mechanics, interaction mechanics, right? I mean, it's just like you find these things. It doesn't automatically happen. If they picked it up and brought it back to my library, you might not even notice that. Like, so
I found it accidentally.
Yeah, there's a real attention thing going on there. I did also find a level everybody one. I forget what that's called, increased level or something like that.
Those are critical, I think.
Yeah, those are, I mean, certainly helpful. That was on level 7. I found that. I mean, on level 8, I have found sort of what you're talking about, but it's a huge, I mean, I think it's just the enemy keepers area, because it's a huge area. I mean, I think basically because of my sort of turtle approach has been too slow. I think basically the enemy is just like tunneling everywhere. So you end up with these long corridors, and I'm just, I mean, I was at a point where I'm like, well, I've lost again, just before recording. But I had one imp who was up there lost in their, shenanigans, just taking territory. I mean, ultimately he ran into, a force that he couldn't reckon with, but he was just kind of like claiming square by square as he went. I was just kind of watching him go, because I was curious, like, where does this go? But I think it all just, was just one of the many tentacles of the great enemy empire at that point, great underground empire at that point. So it was a little annoying, but anyway, let's turn to kind of our grab bag of additional topics. Then we wanted to talk a little bit about audio design as well. I mean, I have been hearing, I've been paying more attention to hearing the enemies where they might break through, which was, I think they actually do a little graphical effect as well to show you, like, there's something going on in this area. On level 8, I actually use the the way you can reinforce your walls to make them unbreakable. I used that to close off an area from which the enemy could, infiltrate, because that was how I lost a lot. The first time I tried the level.
Can you do that manually, you mean?
You can,
or you mean putting a imp there?
Yeah, you put an imp there in ground you've already claimed. So I dug a corridor across a gap that went to gold, but I could see that they were there and hear them doing that stuff. And it's kind of I don't know, it's like a grid that's maybe 6 squares wide of like this gap, and they're getting all that gold, and I'm like, well, I can't get at the gold, but I can stop them getting into my base this way. So I claimed the squares, and then I dropped an imp specifically to reinforce the north facing walls, or the north backing walls, to prevent them breaking through and getting into my base. So that was a kind of a neat mental discovery of like, okay, here's how I can protect my base.
Yeah.
Because I thought about earlier more open levels being like, well, I could just surround my base with like effectively a moat, right? I could make a big square around my base and reinforce all the walls that face out so that they have to come in through the one place I want them to come in. I could do that. I mean, probably take a bunch of imps, but you could do it, right? So it's been interesting to kind of make those kind of discoveries and be like, oh, I can use that in this way. I just don't think I'm learning those things as fast as I need to be in order to be good at the game. So, but anyway, to the audio design, I just wanted to point out that I had picked up on the thing that you were talking about where you can hear them. They're just on the other side of this wall, kind of problem.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah. When the heroes are trying to break in. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make the point that I hope we talked about when we played some of the other RTSs. I guess it would have been Warcraft and Homeworld, but is that all we've played?
Yeah, pretty much.
But anyway, like RTSs, especially because there's always so much going on and so much plate spinning, audio design is so important. I would say dynamic music is as well. And as a player, it's like, even once
you should define what you mean by dynamic music.
Well, dynamic music meaning music that's reacting to the state of the game, right? And so,
just for players who maybe haven't heard that.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, and it wasn't, it's not always a common thing. It wasn't back then, but and I think in this era, it's mostly going to be like combat or not combat, but they get more complex. Those systems get more complex over the years, and now there's games that have completely dynamic music based on basically mixing on the fly based on the state of the game. So it gives you different signals about what's happening. And it's actually an important part of gameplay, not just for ambient feel,
or even different instruments. I've definitely played games where, based on the units that were present, you got, suddenly you've got a tuba. That means whatever, and things like that. So the dynamic aspect of things can be things like melody or major minor keying. It's just another way to frame the melody, I guess. I mean, the harmonies too, but literally, like, what instruments are present in the mix. We have way more channels these days to do those sorts of things. The middleware, nobody really writes these systems themselves that much anymore. The middleware is really, really good to do all of these things, and you really just need some, game side, gameplay programmer support to be like, hey, what information do you need to make these decisions? Anyway, continue. So cleared up what that means.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the music, to hit the music really quickly, there's not a lot to talk about there, but I have been impressed with, it's got this sort of like early 90s John Carpenter horror film feel to it, because it's got synthesized music, but it's kind of spooky, but then there's times when it's like this weird gothic nursery rhyme music. Like,
wow.
I just feel like it's very on point. It's very it's very a good partner to everything that's happening in the game. I feel like the music helps me get in the mood quite a bit, and when good music is matched well with the game play, that's always something that I like
Yeah.
to appreciate. But they
It's
definitely chose a genre, and I think their genre was John Carpenter.
yeah,
You know?
that's good. No, it's funny. I've been because I pick a little. I know you don't listen, but I pick a little musical stinger from the game to start the episode. We play our theme song, then I play a little bit of music, and I try to do a different one each week. But the tracks for this game, there's only like 6 or something on the original soundtrack. Um, but they're all like, they start off with something spooky and actually not very melodic. And then later they go into kind of more of a heavy, almost a
There's
heavy
some
metal,
there's some
kind
metal
of
going
feel.
on too.
And then later in the track, and this will all be in one big long track, it'll be like something else. And they basically, I think, are composing their sound, the soundtrack that must have been released at some point, um, out of these different elements of like, these are different ways you might hear the level. So
Mm.
it's interesting, just trying to pick something representative to front load the episode with has been a little like, I like, this is the feel. It's like partly this feel, but it's also partly this feel. Like, how do I pick, 30 seconds of something to to represent what the game sounds like? It's
Yeah.
been a challenge. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that.
yeah,
This sounds like extra challenging this time. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I won't spend too much more time on it, but when it again with RTSs, especially because there's so many units going and doing their own thing often, and you're not able to keep it all, in view. This game in particular, you want to know what the units are doing, and not only that, but for me, I don't remember what resolution you're playing at, but I'm playing at the default, so it's a 640
yeah,
or whatever.
same, yeah,
So it's really hard to see them anyway. And unless you're hovering over them, you don't even know their level or their health or whatever. So I really rely on audio cues to tell me what's going on most of the time in a given area. And it's all localized audio too. So it's like if you hover even over fog of war areas, you will get some information about what's in that black area. Could even be their dungeon heart. You might be able to find their dungeon heart and know, okay, they're that's where I'm going. Um, but just taking the imps as one example, like the sound of them taking territory is very distinct. And
mhm.
when you hear it, you're like, okay, good. They're doing what I need them to do right now. I'm going to go do this while they're doing that, and then I'm going to come back over in a couple seconds and then start laying down whatever room, right? But you hear that it's a very positive sound. It's a very bright sound, and it tells you very clearly, and nothing else sounds like it. And that's a very simple action and kind of like a fundamental action of the game. But I think it's a great example of a really well done audio cue because it's so important because you need to know. So, like a lot of times, I'm waiting, like I'm waiting with my cursor for them to lay, to take territory because I'm ready for them to I'm ready to lay the zone down. Then continuing with just the imps, like the audio for them digging in rock versus gold is different, and you can hear the difference. Them walking, and dropping the gold back, you're like, okay, they're putting gold, they're doing what I want them to do. But then you go across every one of the units. Training is the other funny one because you can hear when they level up, and each unit has their own voice cues or sound cues for when they level up.
Oh, interesting. I haven't
And
picked up on
it's
that one. Yeah.
it's hilarious
These
because
other
they're
ones I've definitely
obviously
heard, but that I have not. So, or maybe I
there's
haven't realized what it was. Yeah.
maybe, yeah. I mean, they're all positive sounds, of course, and they're all like, they're all like bravado kind of like, oh hey, like I'm
Yeah.
leveled up, even like the dragon or whatever. So it's but when you that's sort of another example of the matrix thing I was talking about earlier. When you start to understand and learn these audio cues and you're playing for a long time, you start just kind of vibing with it. You like get the general sense of, okay, people are doing what they need to be doing. And then when you need very specific information, you can go over and listen for it and you get that as well. So it's just, it's definitely a challenging discipline, I would think, for audio designers and an RTS to make sure that everything sounds correct, but everything has to sound distinct from each other because it's all very, very gameplay focused, you know. And also in this case, it's the aesthetic side of it has to be good too, because like you said earlier, they've doubled down on what they're doing. And if the audio didn't sound like you're playing the villain, and that these were monsters,
Right.
then it would stand out as being something was wrong, you know? So it's yeah, I've been really appreciating, like, there's a lot of times when I'm almost playing the game just by the audio in a way, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, credit to, it doesn't look like they had a separate, uh, you know, person for this. They don't, there was no like audio designer, kind of role back in 1997. But Russell Shaw, who also composed the music, is listed for both music and sound on this game. I do not see. I'm just looking up in the credits. I don't see any
Yeah, I
other.
mean, oftentimes they would do both, yeah.
Yeah, any other audio specific support. I mean, I'm sure there is a gameplay programmer in here who
Mhm.
was part of that to say, oh, these events go to you when these things happen, but that is not called out separately. So at least for now, credit Russell Shaw with that. Good work.
Oh, and the other one is just like picking up an enemy, and when you drop an enemy, they
Yeah,
all have their own distinct sounds, and you're like, "Okay," because sometimes it's finicky,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm like, "Did I drop
I've
them?"
also found it finicky. Yeah, for sure.
So the audio cues for me has been very helpful. Like, okay, I did, because you can't. I guess you can't drop them on top of other units, maybe, or in certain spaces. I hate the cursor in this game, and it's
Yeah,
all of the Bullfrog games do this. XCOM did it as well. I just ugh,
yeah, yeah.
the grid based cursor thing is just laggy, and I
Yeah,
mean, just so hard to
it's very hard to know what's gonna happen. I mean,
just make it just
yeah,
discrete. Like,
yeah.
why is it? Yeah.
Been a lot of times where I've been like, what just like, why did that
Yeah.
not work? Yeah, there are a couple UI quirks that are like that. I think also with picking up units from the interface, you have to click on the interface once, and then the second now when you actually click
Yeah.
on it again, you'll start picking units, which I sort of like. I kind of get is probably solved for a different problem. Like, okay, well, I guess we'll just make it so you select now. You get focus. Now you do a separate, click to do that, so you don't mistakenly pick up somebody. But yeah, you've got you're solving a problem there, but maybe creating a new one. So I'm constantly running into that where it's like I thought I picked up a guy and I moved all the way over the map, and now I didn't. Yeah, so same thing there. All right, let's call it there. We do have another topic we'll get to next week. Next week, of course, we'll also do our takeaways. Hopefully, I'll have moved beyond level 8, and Tim will have moved beyond level 10. But we have an email sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. Would you read that for us, sir?
Yes. What do we have here? From Dry Mistype. Okay. He's reaching now. I mean, you think he's running out of?
Yeah.
Hello,
It's
Dry Mistype.
anagrams when you've got two Y's in there. It's
Yeah, you're pretty sunk. Hey, Brett and Tim, with Konami Code turning 40 last week, oh, I didn't know that. It made me wonder about the role of cheat or hidden codes in games. Apparently, it was originally created by a dev to help in porting Gradius to home consoles and not intended to be left in. A happy accident, then, for many players, myself included. The code is some of Konami's notoriously difficult games allowed them to actually be beaten instead of tossed in the closet. Speaking of the devil, the code then acted as a dungeon heart in Zelda. Okay, I'm riding this wave. Mystery. Letting you choose your difficulty or see how few times you needed to use it as you improved. I think codes also served a few other purposes. Word of mouth marketing for games spread on playgrounds as rumors of secret codes passed around. Magazines sold by having verified secrets published for the first time, and some codes brought longevity or variety to a game by unlocking harder difficulties or extra characters or modes? Do you have any favorite cheat codes or stories around them? Any you implemented yourself during development? Regards, Dry Mistype.
For those not in on the joke there, that is a long time listener and frequent email mystery dip. I mean, certainly I've implemented some. In fact, I implemented the system for them on Starfighter, which then was in Jedi Starfighter as well. Actually, because we released so the first Starfighter came out on CD, which meant it was just browsable on any PC. So all of our codes, which were just in text, in text files, was that true? No, I mean, I don't remember. There may have been some of them. Anyway, if you opened up files, you could see the text. If you just used it in a hex editor, in some cases, I can't remember if some of them were in the code or some of them were elsewhere. But anyway, you could find the code. So all of our codes were easy to find in that one. And then for the sequel, I went and implemented a thing where it would take the hash of the code, so it would run an algorithm over the string and generate a number, and then it would compare against that number. But that number could be matched by a number of strings, so there are actually technically more cheats that would be accepted in the sequel that might not mean anything, right? It could be a random string and it just happened to work out to this. I think that somebody actually found that. Somebody found some weird string of letters that worked, and did some other code for Jedi Starfighter. So yeah, I've implemented both the system and, of course, a number of the codes. And my favorite, of course, and hat tip to our late lamented Belmont for entering my one from Jedi Starfighter, which was Maggie, which in both of those games I had a hello message to my sons, which would just print on the cheat code screen when you entered the code. But we did other things too. We did invincibility and things like that as well. I don't remember. And we did a bunch that did unlocks of various videos and things that were extras, that you could earn through doing good progress on the missions, is my recollection. Might have also had a ship. I feel like we might have also had a ship that we unlocked via code.
This is territory I cannot help you with.
Yeah, you don't remember.
I don't know. Like the only thing I remember fondly about cheat codes, I don't remember if it was Starfighter or Jedi Starfighter, was talking to the Penny Arcade guys about getting approval because we used one or two that were references to them or something. Because I forget maybe it was in Jedi Starfighter because they that maybe reviewed or had some joke about the first one.
They liked Starfighter, yeah.
So we did an homage, and we got I forget what the codes were, but it was fun to kind of but as far as like as a player,
I don't remember what it did. I might have unlocked all the missions. There was it was like PNY RCDE or something like that. It was PNY RCADE, unlocks everything. Yeah, I actually just called it up. These things are all online, so you can find these things. Yeah, we did have some ships that we unlocked. Oh, we reversed the controls. We had some things where we would turn on different, God mode or like just the flyby mode for a level. Yeah, so we didn't have that many.
They were fun to do. I remember it's kind of like achievements before achievements, right? It's like they're fun to design and think about and name and do all that stuff. And to Mystery's point about their sort of whole mythology, looking back, it's so funny to me that they were so mysterious and no pun intended, and so like locked behind closed doors, because I feel like at the end of the day, like, who cares? Like, why? That we talked about, I hope we talked about this with Darren when we played Dark Forces, but I think it was his call, right? Like, he was sort of notorious about like putting those controls in the options, and that carried over into Jedi Knight, and that carried over forward to Outlaws and everything. And it's like, just let the player do what they want to do. Like, why? And I think for that reason, I, as a player, never use them there. So I have no favorites, because I'm like, that's just not my thing. I'm not, it's like, if I hit a wall or something.
I was watching your stream a couple of weeks ago. I saw you use cheat codes.
Okay, all right. Now that's a different story. That was a different story, but that was to allow streaming to continue. But but as far as a player, like, I've always known they were there, but I never, it was never my thing. That's all.
Yeah, I don't remember them either. I do remember the id ones were funny. One was like IDKFA, FNS. So that was one. That might have been God mode or something like that. So they were kind of funny. We did actually have more of them on the first game, which is funny. We had one that was, I think, a day where a whole bunch of people dressed up. Our company president at the time would wear like a black turtleneck and jeans literally every day. That was his uniform.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we had a picture of that in there. I'm looking at those as well. So we had some. Most of them, though, were things that you can unlock anyway. Like, you didn't have to do it. So this was just a shortcut, so you didn't have to, 100% every mission or something like that to get.
Well, you needed God mode to get through any of Troy's levels, so
they aren't as bad. They aren't as bad on Starfighter as they were in
that last level.
Well, yeah, that's
not his fault. That's my fault.
There's a lot of fault to be had there. It's also my fault, because the ship you're fighting against is bouncing around left and right. So it's like, oh, hey, how about this flight model we wrote for, flying around in space? Let's go inside an enclosed space and have the AI try to figure that out. Anyway, yeah, I don't have a lot of glorious memories of cheats either. I honestly can't even tell you the last time I've put in a cheat or even looked up a cheat. Although I will say I was tempted today with Dungeon Keeper. It's just like, if I just had, maybe if I had more money to start. But I didn't, in the spirit of the cast.
Anyway. There must be a cheat code for leveling up that's probably the most valuable one. Like,
leveling your creatures,
leveling everybody up.
Yeah.
Like that power up does, but like doing it writ large, that might be good. Yeah, that's an interesting. It's not. I'm not saying it as a judgment for anyone who uses them. I think they're great. It just for some reason never was something that even as a kid, I never even thought to do it. The only one when we played Adventure, it's not a cheat code, but that hidden thing.
Well, that's
the credits.
That's the first Easter egg.
Thing.
Yeah, that's a different.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's more of an Easter egg. But so But
I mean, I think using it in Contra makes a lot of sense, because those games are pretty ridiculous.
Don't tell Kay on that.
Well, look, Kay.
He knows.
It's hard earned. Maybe you used the cheat code to learn it, though. I don't know. I can't say.
He'll never say. He'll never say.
Maybe a little Kaon, baby Kaon, lowercase Kaon was using the Contra code left and right. Well, anyway, if you want to hear our thoughts on codes or whatever else, then you can shoot us email as well at devgameclub@gmail.com. And of course, we'd love to get your reviews. I find the Apple ones, other ones I won't necessarily see, so maybe also shoot us an email and just let us know. We're on the web at devgameclub.com, and my co-host here, Twitch, is at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with the JR at the end.
Last week you were hitting men, I think. What are you thinking? We might try to do some multiplayer. We'll see if we can figure that out tomorrow.
Let's do that. That sounds hilarious.
If not, what else is going on?
I don't know. I gotta say I'm a little uninspired right now, so I gotta figure it out. My default tends to be Hitman, because it's just one of my favorites, and I think it's just fun to stream it. Because it
very well, which is
I know
for streaming.
Exactly. I can kind of adapt. Like last week, where I threw a banana at Bruce Lee's opponent, taking the target out in mid fight. They were about to start their fight, because this was the Bruce Lee elusive target mission, and I was protecting him basically. So I threw a banana
because he needs your help.
He apparently, well, he was drugged. He was drugged. To his credit.
Okay.
He was drugged. Yeah. So I had to throw a banana. And of course, it didn't work out well because they saw me throw the banana. So, but I think Luigi clipped it out. I think it was Luigi. It might have been somebody else. Anyway, so let's see if we can get Dungeon Keeper going. I actually, to be honest, I really want to stream Majora's Mask and finish the game that way. But I need a capture card. So
yeah, well, it might be a good thing to find an emulator for. Like, you've paid for the game, so.
Oh, have I?
Yeah, you have.
That darn Nintendo subscription.
Anyway, we have a link to our community-run Discord in the end notes, the show notes for the show, if you'd like to join in and listen in there. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by the immortal Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo, merch store, Discord, all sorts of things by Mark Garcia. Have fun being unblemished of face and neck this week, and good night.
Good night.